1.
Good evening and welcome to the Sacramento County Fentanyl Awareness Town Hall. My name is Lori Miller and I'm a division manager for Sacramento County Department of Health Services, and I will be your moderator tonight. This event is being recorded and available for future viewing. I want to first thank our panel guests and you, our attendees, for tuning in tonight. This is the second town hall in a series we will have in the coming year to address the fentanyl crisis here in Sacramento County. Fentanyl continues to devastate our community. It is considered the silent killer. A very small amount can be deadly. Before we begin our panel presentations, I want to take a moment to honor the many lives lost here in Sacramento and across the nation. All of these precious lives mattered. Every life lost to fentanyl is one too many. The goal of this town hall is to inform and educate about the dangers of fentanyl and counterfeit pills, raise awareness that one pill can kill you and that drug experimentation is no longer safe, provide harm reduction, substance use, and mental health resources, and finally, to save lives. We have convened a panel who will share some brief remarks with you in hopes of raising awareness about the deadly epidemic. Following remarks from each of our panelists, we will then move to a public question and answer period. Please submit any questions from the public to communityrelations@sacda.org. We will now begin with our first panelist. I would like to introduce Anne Marie Schubert, District Attorney for Sacramento. She has been a law enforcement leader, champion, and valued partner in the effort to bring attention and awareness to this important issue.
Thanks so much, Lori, and thank you everybody that is tuning in tonight. I think it is a testament to our commitment and to your commitment to try to help save lives here in Sacramento County and really outside of our county. So I'm the District Attorney of Sacramento. I've had the honor of that job for many years now, but I want to just kind of echo what Lori Miller said, which is we have to acknowledge that there is a human toll when we lose lives to fentanyl, and we have a national epidemic of fentanyl in our country, and it's right here in Sacramento County. Probably over a year ago, our office, I got notified by other people around the state that they started seeing fentanyl in their communities, and we then started to dig into what was going on in Sacramento. And this first slide, I hope resonates and makes people understand the significance of what we're seeing here, which is consistent across many other jurisdictions. So in our county, the number of homicides between January of 2020 and April 11th of 2022 stands at about 187. That's 187 people have died by homicide. But when you look at the number of people that have died as a result of fentanyl, the number is even higher. And that is a staggering number that we all have to recognize that there are many people losing their lives to fentanyl. If we can go to the next slide, please. I think it's important before I kind of go into the statistics of what we're seeing at our crime lab is that the people that are dying from fentanyl cut across all demographics and all age groups. We have seen folks as young as 15 and some folks in their 70s that have overdosed on fentanyl. In 2020, we had 2 children that were 15 years old that died of fentanyl poisoning. In 2021, 15% of the deaths were under the age of 21. 12 of those deaths were between the ages of 16 and 20 years old, and 1 was 15 years old. So this particular, we have a crime lab here in Sacramento County, and I will say this, that if anybody has questions at the end, we have a resident expert, our supervising criminalist, Crystal Suchlin from our crime lab has joined us tonight and will be available for questions. But we are fortunate in Sacramento County to have our own crime lab, and these numbers that you're going to see here really, I think, demonstrate the magnitude of what we're seeing in our crime lab and really ultimately on the streets of Sacramento. So since 2021, our crime lab consistently has found that 99% of the most common street pills that are tested, so oxycodone is the most common one, but the 99% of those are fake. And of those 99% that are fake, 99% contain fentanyl. That is a shocking number, and it tells you the nature of the deadly nature of these pills. The number of pills that have been seized by law enforcement here in just this county alone is also staggering. So what we've seen that pills that have been not only seized by law enforcement, but that actually submitted to our crime lab. In 2020, we had 622 pills. Seems like a lot, has the ability to kill almost 45,000 adults. Okay, 622 pills, 45,000 adults. Then we went into 2021, 165,000 pills were submitted to our crime lab. That's enough to kill almost 183,000 adults. That's a very staggering. And now, as of May this year in 2022, we're not even halfway through, or we're just about halfway through perhaps, 113,600 pills. That again is also a very staggering number. So next slide, please. So what are we doing here once we started to realize this? First of all, I cannot thank the Department of Health Services enough, and our Sacramento County Board of Supervisors and our county CEO, Ann Edwards, for this amazing partnership that we've all joined together on, because we all recognize the public health dangers, the public safety dangers of what we're seeing here in our community. So one of the things that we realized very early on when we realized the problem was that we needed to do proactive things. We need to prevent fentanyl deaths. We need to educate the public, and hopefully the goal is to save lives. So what are we doing as a DA's office? So I always kind of talk about, we do things both in the courtroom and in the community to try to keep folks safe and to enhance people's lives. So in the courtroom, what we're doing is that when somebody has been prosecuted and found guilty of selling fentanyl, they are given what's called an advisement. And what that means is that if somebody sells fentanyl to somebody, when they plead guilty, the judge is going to advise them that if they sell fentanyl again, and that sale of fentanyl causes injury or death, that they can then be charged with a much more serious crime, including a homicide. It's very similar to what happens in DUI cases. If you are convicted of DUI and you then choose to go on and drink and drive and you kill somebody, you can then be charged with a much higher crime. It's a very serious consequence that we're hopeful that people understand the consequences of selling fentanyl. So since January 2022, when we started giving these advisements, we have given about 15 of those in court. 28 cases are currently pending for those, what we call, it's called a Watson advisement, but basically it's telling that person, don't dare sell fentanyl again, because if you choose to do that and you kill somebody, you're going to be held accountable, including a possible murder charge. All right, so next one, please, thank you. So that's the courtroom. What are we doing in the community? Well, again, we have a tremendous partnership with Department of Health Services and the county. We're also working with schools across Sacramento County and community-based organizations, and as many folks that are willing to partner with us on this incredible journey that we're on. So our public service announcements we're working on across this county include websites, social media platforms. We're on Nextdoor. If you're driving down highways, you might well see the digital billboards showing this campaign that one pill can kill in Sacramento. We have TV and radio spots, including streaming services. We've got it on public transportation now, and we're also putting it in our neighborhood papers. So we started these in August of 2021, and we have, thankfully, funding and resources to put us all the way through the end of December of 2023. As I mentioned before, we have partnered with schools and community-based organizations to help get this information out. We cannot do it alone. Our health services, our law enforcement partners, we need the community to stand together with us to try to prevent more of this dangerous, these deaths. So lastly, I just want to just kind of show you that what we've seen on the streets in our community. This is the photograph from an actual case in Sacramento, and it's a dangerous combination out there. We have a staggering number of pills in this photograph. We have weapons. We have a large scale of money. So this is what law enforcement's seeing on our streets, and these are enough pills to kill thousands and thousands of people. So everything we can do on the enforcement side, the prevention side, the prosecution side, can only help further us in this campaign. And then lastly, if I can just have the last slide before I sign off here. A couple days ago, a colleague of mine actually from Fresno sent me an article about this, this latest case in Southern California, where a school bus driver was charged with giving fentanyl to the students on the bus. And those students were special needs students on campus. And so this is just telling you how significant this problem is. This photograph on the right, while it may look like a legitimate pill, is not. And again, these pills can kill. And lastly, our website, just so everybody knows it and hopefully shares it, is onepillcankillsac.com. That is a central site that we've all partnered on that you can find more information and resource. And with that, Lori, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. You're on mute, Lori.
Our next presenter is Dr. Andrew Mendonza. He is our health program manager with the Department of Health Services Substance Use Prevention and Treatment Unit. Dr. Mendonza is a clinical psychologist overseeing prevention and treatment programs for Sacramento County.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I have a PowerPoint here I'd like to share to help share some information about fentanyl and what we're seeing out here in Sacramento County and our clinical services. So, national emergency. I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. This was published in one of our very leading substance abuse journals out across the nation. It was published back in December, just about 6 months ago or so. And it highlighted that fentanyl overdoses became the #1 cause of death among US adults ages 18 to 45. It is considered a national emergency. And they found that more adults between the ages of 18 and 45 died of fentanyl overdose in 2020 than they did in COVID, motor vehicle accidents, cancer, and suicide. So a very staggering report there. So wanted just to kind of talk about a little bit closer to home here in Sacramento County. So as DA Schubert highlighted, and as most of you know, fentanyl is here in Sacramento. It is present, it is in our schools, in our communities. It is, our kids have access to it, adults, our elderly, everyone has access to fentanyl right now. It is all over Sacramento. Fentanyl does not discriminate. It isn't a rich kid drug. It isn't a poor person drug. It does not discriminate. It kills. It affects the lives of anyone and everyone who's willing to touch it, even knowing or unknowingly. It is extremely potent. It's an extremely potent opioid, and it's causing deaths from overdose and poisoning. Many of these poisonings are folks that literally took one pill, did not even know they were taking fentanyl, and didn't wake up. That's how serious fentanyl is. Community members are dying. These are community leaders, Eagle Scouts, scholars, high performing athletes and scholars in our schools, kids, homeschool kids, everyone. People are dying from fentanyl. DEA did issue a public safety alert as fake prescription drugs contains fentanyl and meth fuels overdose. This was the first alert from the DEA in almost 6 years. So really highlights the seriousness of what we're dealing with, that the DEA actually sent out an alert about this. And we're seeing it on social media. We're seeing it on media of these confiscations of large batches of counterfeit pills that can literally kill hundreds of thousands of people. So what is fentanyl? As you can see here on the screen, it doesn't take a lot to kill you or to overdose from. As you can see, the penny here is zoomed in. That's how much fentanyl we're talking about. That right there can potentially and likely is a deadly dose for somebody. And not just somebody who hasn't engaged in substance abuse or experimentation. That could be a deadly dose for someone who's never done drugs before and someone who has done drugs their whole life. That's, again, it is so unregulated, and we don't know the percentage that are in pills is people don't know what they're taking. They think they do, and they actually don't, and that's when things happen. It's extremely potent. It's cheap to manufacture. The ingredients are easily accessible in Mexico and other countries. It's very easy to cook and make fentanyl. People are making it in their basements here in Sacramento, all across California and the nation. Again, this isn't something that we're seeing in large batches coming across from a particular country. This is all over the place, coming from all over. Fentanyl is 100% more potent than heroin and morphine. So again, a lot of folks will tell me, I've done heroin, I've done morphine my whole life. Fentanyl is nothing. Fentanyl is nothing like heroin or morphine. It's extremely way more potent than those two. And as I show you here on the screen, just a few grams of fentanyl can be deadly. So where are people getting the fake pills? Well, it's a great question. And it's something that every day, all of us in Sacramento County, we're finding out that there's new places that these counterfeit pills are being made available. More commonly, we're seeing them through friends. So folks that are getting them for a graduation party, for a weekend, getting all together with friends, and somebody picks up some. People are getting them from their known and unknown dealers. Social media and Snapchat, very, very present on the social media platforms, the internet or dark web, the malls. Here on the screen here, I wanted to highlight some of the emojis. It's a whole language out there that kids and teens and young adults are using. As you can see, just the common emojis that we use every day to communicate with each other actually have meaning in the drug arena. And certain emojis are basically indications and requests for certain drugs. And it's basically another whole language of how to acquire, buy, and sell drugs. Where are we seeing fentanyl, pills, and powder? Well, pretty much everywhere. We're seeing it in counterfeit psychiatric medications like Adderall. We're seeing it in fake pain medications. We're seeing it in a variety of pill form. Some states have noticed it in marijuana. We're seeing it in methamphetamine, cocaine. A lot of the drugs that are used out on the streets are cut with fentanyl or have fentanyl in it. So again, just because you think you're buying something does not necessarily mean that there's not fentanyl in it. So why are people using drugs? Again, great question. This changes day to day, but in general, what we are noticing, and we're talking with folks that are struggling with this, experimentation, curiosity. So as much as we're getting the word out that fentanyl is deadly and it can poison you and kill you, believe it or not, there's a lot of kids and teenagers that are like, I kind of want to try it. That's horrible that we're seeing that, and we're trying our very hardest to get out there in schools and get out there and really say this is not something you're playing with. So one of my colleagues had that quote at the very bottom, and I think it is a very telling quote. You're playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets. It's really what you're doing. So when you're experimenting, you're curious. It could be accidental. Again, a lot of kids are dying because they thought they were just taking a pill to relax or have a good time with some friends. It had fentanyl. They didn't wake up. Thrill seeking. We know a lot of folks use drugs to cover emotional issues or self-medicate. And then if you have a current substance abuse addiction or something like that, so a lot of times people turn to fentanyl because it could be more of a potent high for them. So signs of abuse, including fentanyl, you're always looking for changes in mood, weight, anxiety, sleep. Someone's more jittery, someone's more calm, they're more withdrawn. Again, these are just some signs. It doesn't necessarily mean it's if somebody's using drugs or not, but we commonly see these signs in folks who have reported using fentanyl. Missing responsibilities, letting your responsibilities kind of go, family needs, school, work, you're messing up, getting into problems in school or work, markings on the skin, bruising, scars, wounds, infection, wearing different clothes to hide the skin because there may be, if they're using like IV drug use, there may be some covering of some drug or some skin damage. And decreased participation, withdrawal in things that used to bring you enjoyment, hobbies, activities, things like that. So what can an overdose or poisoning look like? Luckily, we have our colleague here tonight to go over how to give Narcan. But if you do find someone and you have Narcan, great. But these are some signs that you're looking for that Narcan may be important and may be necessary. Unconsciousness, very small pupils, slow or shallow breathing, snoring, vomiting, and inability to speak, kind of almost being paralyzed, faint heartbeat, limp arms or legs, pale skin, purple lips or fingernails. Those are oftentimes telltale signs that someone is in a grave medical state. They need Narcan, they need EMS, they need 911, they need to get to an emergency department immediately. So what is naloxone, sometimes known as Narcan? It is something in Sacramento County we are getting out to our communities, to our schools. We're making it readily available to anybody and everybody who needs some. It is a lifesaver. And later on in this presentation, you're going to see a presentation from our fire department of how to give this. This is literally the best thing that you can have on you. It's a life-saving effect. It can last between 30 and 90 minutes. So when you give Narcan, it's very important that you have 911 en route as well. A person with fentanyl overdose may need more than 1 dose of Narcan. That's why we always say have a couple doses available to you. Again, call 911. It's a rapid reversal agent. So someone who is going into an overdose, starting to have a medical emergency, Narcan can actually kick them out of that overdose and actually, believe it or not, bring them back to life. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Many of my colleagues have saved lives doing this. I carry it in my bag. I carry it in my car. Everywhere I can have it, I have Narcan. So this is a lifesaver for people. So please, we're going to talk about where to get it and how to obtain it and how to use it a little bit later in this presentation. So where can you get Narcan? Medical providers can give you a prescription. Pharmacies can get it to you without a prescription. There's a fee for that. Calling your pharmacy ahead of time, talking to your doctor who can make a prescription. We have a lot of free community resources out there in Sacramento County, harm reduction agencies, and where there's a lot of resources we'll share with you later in this presentation of places that you can go or contact to get Narcan. And then we also have the Department of Healthcare Services to the state of California, the Naltrexone distribution project. And this is something that my unit is using to get Narcan out to all of our providers, schools. We're really pushing out Narcan. We want Narcan out there so much that you're almost tired of seeing it, that it's out there so much. So what can I do to make a difference? Well, get informed. You're doing it by being here tonight, learning about harm reduction, learning about ways to get folks the help that they need to get Narcan, reduce the risks around the house. What we know is having large amounts of opioids and pills around the house, very high risk. So there's ways to dispose of opioids and fentanyl medication that's no longer needed. And we'll talk about that in some of our resources a little bit later on. If you do have prescription opioids or fentanyl medications, please secure them. Take unused medications to a disposal site, carry naloxone and know how to use it. Have conversations. This is a big one. A lot of teenagers we talk to, they say, you know what? If my parents or my loved one or my caregiver would have just told me about this, I wish I would have known. Kids want to know. They want to be informed. So have those important conversations and then learn about the resources. We're going to share those later on tonight with everybody. So I'm so proud to be part of Sacramento County, the Department of Healthcare Services, our district attorney's office, all of our partners. We are doing a lot of work to get out there and really make a difference. We're focusing on naloxone distribution, awareness, education. We're partnering with our schools. We're getting information out to our hospitals, emergency services, 911, to our treatment providers in the mental health side and in our substance abuse side. We're talking about getting overdose maps and mass overdose spike plans. This can help us give us real-time data about overdoses happening. So for example, maybe there's a bad batch in downtown Sacramento. With the use of this technology, we'll be able to mobilize resources in the moment to get down there into downtown or midtown Sacramento and get Narcan and get help to that particular area. So it's real-time data that can save lives. We're partnering with our pharmacies, with our medical associations. We're working hard to address the stigma around substance use and mental health. We're really working on our harm reduction work, getting out there, funding programs that get harm reduction services out and supplies out to folks who need them the most, partnering with our law enforcement partners, and then also participating and sponsoring our drug take back days. So where to find help and resources? The big one to go to, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in our Q&A session, One Pill Can Kill SAC. If that's the only website you pick up from my presentation tonight, onepillcankillsac.com. Go to the resource page. Everything I talked about tonight, all of where to get Narcan, how to use it, everything is on that website. You also can go to dea.gov/onepill, Sacramento County's website. We have a very robust opioid coalition in Sacramento County. Also, Song for Charlie is a great resource for folks to take a look at. And then I'll put this information a little bit later as we talk in our Q&A session. So thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to Lori.
Thank you, DA Schubert and Dr. Mendonza. Appreciate your presentation. So next up, we have Dr. Amy Mullin with UC Davis Health, Department of Emergency Medicine. Dr. Mullin is a board-certified physician in the California Bridge program. She has been a pioneer in the expanding of the role of the substance use navigators in emergency departments throughout California.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here talking about something that is really important to me and for our community. I'm boarded in both emergency medicine and addiction medicine, so I've been looking at this for a long time, and I can tell you fentanyl is really what is driving our overdose epidemic at this moment. My passion has always been in expanding access to treatment and to making sure anyone who's using opioids is safe and has rapid access to treatment, and that has become all the more important at this moment that we're in right now. Go on to the next slide. In California, we were spared from the opioid epidemic that predominantly hit the East Coast, and that's due to fentanyl. Sacramento, here in Sacramento, we were always a meth place, but probably about 2 years ago, we started to see a lot more fentanyl. We've always had mostly meth, a little bit of heroin, and now almost all of our opioids have been replaced with fentanyl. So it's rare that I see someone who is using just heroin now in the emergency department. And you can see what this has done is in California, we were really lagging the rest of the country in terms of overdose deaths. But in the past couple of years, we have really exceeded all expectations. And now we're surpassing most of the rest of the United States in terms of overdose deaths. And this is in large part being driven by access to fentanyl. Go on to the next slide. And so you've kind of heard this before, but fentanyl is really special. It's a really unique molecule. It's incredibly powerful. It's rapidly absorbed by smoking, snorting, or ingesting. You really don't have to inject fentanyl. Most people who are using it regularly are smoking fentanyl. And because it is so powerful and because it is so rapid acting, they're frequently using several times a day, versus our regular heroin addicts were just using it once a day. So fentanyl is really very, very rapid acting, but then is also long acting. So those effects are stored in the fat and have really long-term effects. So what we see is people really quickly developing tolerance. And what this looks like a lot of times for our kids, our teens out there, is they will start to use it on weekends at a party, but because they'll tend to use it so frequently over the weekends, that really starts to bleed into their weekday life. And before you know it, they start to get caught into a cycle. There is a lot of variation in potency and purity for fentanyl, which just also drives the risk of overdose. And the other part that is difficult, particularly for us in healthcare, is on most urine screens, just a regular screen, we're not going to detect fentanyl. So for a lot of us, we could be flying blind. Our normal urine tox screen that looks for opioids is not going to show fentanyl. So we really have to be aware and know what's going on. Go on to our next slide. So really there's been also a little bit of a difference. Most of the people that we see on the West Coast know that they're using fentanyl. People who are using it regularly will say, I'm using fentanyl versus heroin, versus in the rest of the United States, people are confused and will often talk about heroin. What they're using is fentanyl. So we do see some of these regional variations. The exception is the kids. The exception is our teen and young adult population who are frequently using those blue M30 oxycodone pills. We'll go on to the next slide. And so what I'm seeing a lot is what you've heard from our previous two speakers is the synthetic blue M30 pills, the M30 blues. These are being purchased off of Instagram. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the same story of teenagers who are getting the blue M30s off of Instagram. Just one of the stories that has really just stuck with me is a 15-year-old kid who came into our emergency department after overdosing about 4 times in 2 months. And he had been, this was at the very beginning of the pandemic, around spring of 2020, and he had been purchasing it off of Instagram. We finally were able to kind of figure out what was happening and to get him into treatment and to help him and to help his mother. But it was a really tough story because she had reversed him at home so many times, which was just heartbreaking for that mother who I'm sure was afraid to sleep with him in the house. So I think it's just really important for us to know about this, particularly for the kids. The other thing to know is with these blue M30 pills. So most of the time, if they're at parties and they're ingesting the pills, and then someone will decide to smoke one of those pills, because once you smoke it or snort it, it becomes so much more powerful. If you are not used to doing it, that is an inevitable overdose. So we have seen that where someone who had been taking pills at a party and then someone decides to crush it and snort it will almost inevitably lead to an overdose because it is so powerful, so rapidly absorbed. We do hear of supplies of heroin, methamphetamine, and even cannabis products having fentanyl in them. It's a little bit difficult to test, so we don't know for sure. I have seen someone who had supposedly used only cannabis present with what was a fentanyl overdose. And I have colleagues who have their own mass spectrometers who are testing cannabis products out of the emergency department and have found a lot of fentanyl. So just something to be aware of. Just because you are not using a pill, because you are not using what you think of as fentanyl, that it can contain fentanyl. So it's just really raised the stakes because fentanyl can be so rapidly fatal. Next slide. And so this is really going to be the broken record of today. The real answer is this: Narcan, 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 Narcan. This is naloxone. We have, in my emergency department, participate in the naloxone distribution program. So we pass it out. We are starting treatment on demand. I mean, this needs to be an all hands on deck effort if we are to stem this tide in our communities. For those of you out there, I do keep naloxone in my purse. And really, I think the takeaway should be, if you think that you might want to use naloxone, use naloxone. It's actually quite safe. And I have not ever seen in my 15 years of working in emergency department a bad thing from giving naloxone. So there's nothing that you can do wrong. So if you are thinking, hey, maybe I should try naloxone, don't worry about the pupil size, just give it. There is not a downside to trying naloxone if you think there is any possibility of an overdose. So this is really my take-home message, is to know that fentanyl is out there, to know that you don't always know, and everyone should have access to naloxone at all times. Thank you very much. Next slide. And this is just a little bit of a plug in our emergency departments, and hopefully most of our ERs in Sacramento. We are proud to have a treatment space. And so people can come in, be connected with our wonderful community of substance use navigators to be offered treatment, medication-assisted treatment with buprenorphine, actively connected to outpatient resources in our community, and most importantly, walk out with naloxone in hand. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Mullin. Next panelist is Severine Hollingsworth. She is a community liaison with BART programs and Mendmark treatment centers. Severine is a very strong advocate for medication-assisted treatment services and ensuring people get the help that they need.
Good evening. My name is Severine Hollingsworth. Thank you, Laurie, for the introduction, and thank you for having me on this panel. I represent programs that provide medication-assisted treatment for individuals suffering from opioid use disorder. Next slide, please. When I started 4 years ago, I really never had to look into fentanyl. I didn't really have to learn anything about fentanyl. We heard it once in a while. But like Dr. Mullin said, 2 years ago, suddenly this fentanyl problem started popping up. We started having individual testing positive for fentanyl if they disclosed it, because like Dr. Mullin said, I love to go after her because she provides great information. We do not always necessarily test for fentanyl, but we do send regularly outside to labs. Now, what's very, very unnerving is now 95% of our patients test positive for fentanyl. So a lot of them are like, but no, I don't use fentanyl. And indeed, fentanyl is found in marijuana. And I even have a personal friend like, well, why would they put fentanyl in marijuana? Well, because it's going to act so much more strongly on the brain that this individual will go back to buy more. So our programs just used to test randomly for fentanyl. Now we're at the point that every month, because there is urine analysis done every month, it's being sent out to the lab to test if there is fentanyl, so we can help our patients also so they can be aware. So quoting a friend who works in the ED, it's very sad to hear. In the past, individuals were hoping that their drug of choice would not have fentanyl. Now they're hoping that they won't die from using their choice of drugs. And to quote Dr. Mullin, addiction is not a moral failure. medication-assisted treatment can help individuals suffering from substance use disorder. Next slide. So, next slide, please. So what is exactly medication-assisted treatment? I like to compare it with smoking cessation. Because if you've never used opioid, heroin, hard drugs like this, maybe smoking can be a little bit easier to understand, right? We would never have a problem if an ex-smoker is using gum, right? Little Nicorette here and there, or if they were using a patch, and if that didn't help, maybe they could use some medication to help them control the withdrawal and the craving symptoms. And it's exactly the same thing with opioid, except opioid is very high on the scale of addiction. So when we provide a patient with methadone or buprenorphine in a MAT program, what it does is that it allows a patient to stabilize for 24 to 36 hours. It reduces the withdrawal symptoms and it controls the craving. The fear of going through withdrawal is phenomenal. Individuals are so scared to go into withdrawal that they will keep using. And that's this vicious circle. So when you provide methadone or buprenorphine to an individual, recovery can start, stabilization can start. We've seen patients coming in desperate. And after a few weeks, they come in, they're washed, they're fed, they're rebuilding relationship, they find jobs, right? It decreases also all the involvement in illicit activity. It reduces disease exposure. There is so much benefit to medication-assisted treatment, whether with methadone or buprenorphine. But most importantly, and I'm going to address we're just trading one drug for another. Well, it's not really a problem to trade a cigarette for a Nicorette, right? And it's better for overall health. So why not trade heroin, fentanyl for methadone, from which you'll be able to be tapered over the years? Same thing with Suboxone. But most importantly, and it's at the bottom of the slide, it does not create the high of illicit drugs. It's prescribed by medical doctors and it's administered at very specific doses. Next slide, please. So we have methadone. So I'm going to use my hand as a cup. It's a receptor that's placed right there in the back, in the stem. So methadone, what it does is that it meets individuals where they are and it fills up the receptor, right? Fills up. So for an individual who's been using heroin for 20 years intravenously, this is going to be a very good solution. Buprenorphine, in the street, it's called Suboxone. There is Naltrexone in it. And Andrew had talked about what Naltrexone is. It's the Narcan, right? It pulls the opioid from the brain. It's a partial agonist. So it goes, maybe halfway there. And it works wonderfully also for some individuals. And that's what's amazing is that methadone was created in the 70s. Buprenorphine was created 20 years ago. And hopefully we'll keep being able to create and find products like this to help our individuals suffering from opioid use disorder. Naltrexone is a full antagonist. So what it does is that it covers the receptors. Nothing can go in. So it's also used sometimes for alcohol use disorder. And you could drink wine and nothing's going to happen. So those are wonderful products used in medication-assisted treatment programs. But most importantly, with all this, what we need is counseling. Without counseling, you put a big Band-Aid and eventually the Band-Aid will fall off and you will not understand the cause of the suffering. Next slide, please. So we have fabulous programs in Sacramento County. They're all listed on these slides. I'm not going to read them all. You are welcome to go online. Andrew had shown the different sites and you can find all this information. All those providers are offering methadone, buprenorphine, and naltrexone. And I really want to thank you. You can move to the next slide. Thank you, Laurie, for the introduction. Yes, I'm a big advocate. I talk to anybody, their mother, their sisters, and I really hope we can get a hold of this crisis. And I thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, Severine. Our next panelists are Laura and Chris Didier, parents of Zachary Didier, forever 17. After losing their son, Laura and Chris have made it their mission to educate and raise awareness around the dangers of fentanyl and other prescription pills bought online or black markets. They are making a difference locally and around the country by sharing their son's story.
Thank you, Lori. We're just so grateful to be a part of this panel and to speak to you today. We're here to put a face to this crisis in our area. Well, I think my camera's all, there we go. That's the face right there. That's our son, Zach Didier. And he was only 17 years old when a counterfeit pill ended his life 18 months ago. So as you've heard, this was really at the beginning of the time that fentanyl was entering our local community. So there was no awareness. Zach was doing incredibly well. He was a senior at Whitney High School in Rockland. He was a straight A student. He was the star of the school musical. He was working toward his Eagle Scout. He was on the track team. He was our youngest of three, and we had not had any substance or drug issues of any kind with our kids. So we felt they were all on really steady paths. We were very plugged in with Zach. All of our kids were very close to each other. Zach had the same circle of friends from third grade, all really great kids with great families. So we just felt blindsided, absolutely blindsided when he fell asleep at his desk on December 26th of 2020, and Chris discovered him passed away the next morning. We came to this in the most horrific way. When the first responders came to our home, they did not find any evidence, no drugs, nothing in his room. We always like to share about him because we want everybody to understand that this can happen in any family. It can happen to any kid who isn't aware of what's out there. What was sold to Zach was sold to him as a Percocet pill. It looked exactly like a Percocet pill, and just that one pill ended everything, this beautiful path that he was on in life, and just that one pill ended it all. And I'll let Chris share a little bit more about our beautiful child.
Thank you, Lori and Marie Schubert and everyone for the opportunity to share our story. As Laura eloquently described, our son, Zach, was truly a remarkable young adult firing on all 8 cylinders and very, very hungry to live in the world and very excited on what new adventures await him. He demonstrated excellence in most everything he's ever done and never really gave us any concern about his decisions or being a responsible young adult. And I think that sharing our story shows the pervasiveness in how this fentanyl, how the drug can affect any socioeconomic class, anyone who's struggling with grades, with their social setting, or someone who's successful with it. It does not discriminate. As Laura mentioned, it hit our family like a Mack truck going 120 miles an hour. And we never saw it coming. And we were confused. We suffered debilitating torment on how could such a brilliant, successful, smart, and responsible young person just no longer be alive. And the coroner said, we're ruling out suicide. It's probably a health problem we didn't know about, or fentanyl. And that really set us a tremendous bout of confusion and disorientation. The toxicology confirmed it. And as the investigation started, we started to learn that Zach was approached by a drug dealer through a social media platform at a public place. The mall was just opening up. And there was a lot of young high school kids around public places, and drug dealers are there looking for their opportunity to sell a product. And they're offering the whole spectrum of products, something that might be considered light, like cigarettes or vapes or edibles, or something very hard like cocaine, heroin, or what might be perceived as something light like a prescription pill. But the reality is these prescription pills are the most dangerous paths. And that really makes it sinister. And that's why we wanted to bring awareness to this topic.
Yes, once we got the confirmation that it was fentanyl, and in that interim time, we were talking with neighbors and friends and educating ourselves, trying to find out what had just happened. And we were met with so many, everybody, just saying, what are you talking about? I've never heard of this. What do you mean there's fake pills out there? But what was the most, what just really hit my heart the hardest was seeing his friends and just the shock in their eyes, like what is going on? And that knowledge gap, was just so tremendous. So when we went public, we sat down and said, we want to put a face to this. We want to educate our community, because in talking with the DA's office of Placer County that's handling Zach's case, we do have an arrest. We've been incredibly well supported by both Sacramento County and Placer County have been incredible. And we just realized that we wanted to help be a part of the solution by sharing our story, helping to reduce stigma, helping to encourage other parents to share their stories and know that they'll be safe and supported in doing that. And I got connected, the resource was shared earlier, to a nonprofit called Song for Charlie, and it's songforcharlie.org. And the resources on there really are geared toward these younger, sadly, these younger victims. So the content on there is really geared toward, middle school, high school, college, young adults and kids. And it talks about fentanyl in general, but more specifically about the counterfeit pill issue. And Chris and I regularly go to school campuses, mostly high schools, but we have spoken at several middle schools as well, just giving, the presentation of what's happening, what happened to Zach. We show videos of Zach so they can just see that he's a kid just like any of them, and the parents can see themselves in us. And so that's, kind of where we're putting a lot of our effort is on that side of it, is just the education piece and working with different nonprofits on this.
I'd like to add that there are many lanes that we could fight on this to bring awareness, working with district attorneys. Laura already mentioned, we're extremely grateful for the traction that has been made already. From what I understand, over 20 district attorneys in our state are requiring or giving letters of admonishment to people who are convicted of a crime, drug-related crime, to give them a warning. There's getting into the classrooms, like what Song for Charlie is doing, is getting content on social media platforms where the kids are on their platforms. So they hear the message at school, they hear the message from their parents at home, and they see the message on their phones. I also work for a nonprofit called Stop the Void, or Victims of Illicit Drugs. And they are also pushing hard for awareness as well. We've actually volunteered for quite a number of different nonprofits, the California Drug-Induced Homicide as well. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think one of our biggest challenges in our advocacy is the stigma that gets connected to our message, because for those who don't understand or have a history with drug use or fentanyl, they just kind of compartmentalize, oh, that's that drug problem. I feel bad for that family. And addiction can be associated with the story, and they kind of lose out and not understand that this is something very different. This is not the drug landscape of the past, because in the past, if someone experimented because they're young, they're growing, they may have had opportunities to learn from their drug use, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or whatever drug, and they can age out of it, or they can have intervention from family and friends. But today, literally, a half a pill could kill someone, and it's their first time use. It's a much more deadly environment. We were asked to talk about SB 350. For those who don't know, it's a bill that was introduced by Senator Melissa Melendez to the Public Safety Committee last March. And essentially is to give a warning to anyone convicted or who pleads guilty or no contest to drug trafficking or manufacturing, and that any subsequent drug conviction that results in a fatality may in fact be charged with voluntary manslaughter or murder, just like what District Attorney Anne-Marie Schubert was saying. And the purpose behind that is if it's codified into law, then it becomes a requirement and it can't be debated in a subsequent crime or a subsequent case. The Public Safety Committee has reviewed this bill 3 times, and all 3 times they did not pass it, which results in what happened after that was a ballot initiative was started. You can find more details about that at onepillkills.com. And essentially it's being targeted for the November 24 election if SB 350 still doesn't pass. So there's some more initiative and effort being done. From what I understand, there needs to be about 700,000 votes. So if you go to onepillkills.com, you can sign a petition and start helping bring this ballot or bring this initiative to the ballot if it needs to be there. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Laura, do you want to add anything else?
I just wanted to again express my gratitude. When we first went public with Zach's story in February of 2021, we were immediately met with support and from Placer County, from Sacramento County, and that doesn't happen everywhere. We've gotten connected to grieving families in other parts of the state, in other states, and they've not been met with so much support. So we really are grateful for that. Grateful that there has been this big push for awareness, and there's tragically there are a lot of us in Sacramento and Placer counties who have lost beautiful children, just like Zach, and then of course all the other victims of different ages and demographics. But we're just glad to be able to bring awareness and share a little bit about our son.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura and Chris, for sharing your story. And as you've heard, fentanyl is killing the one-time user, the experimenter, and somebody who may be struggling with opioid use disorder. It's not discriminative. It's pretty scary out there. And so we want the community to be aware of the dangers, who it's impacting. Our next panelist is Matthew Hines. He's a firefighter and paramedic with the Sacramento Fire Department, here to talk about naloxone or Narcan and provide a demonstration on how to administer it.
Hi, my name is Matt Hines. I work for the Sacramento Fire Department. I've been with them for about 12 years. And this is very common, just like as you've heard from everyone else. It's very common. It's a very common call. Could happen about once a day, even potentially. So I'm here to demonstrate. It's very, very easy. They instructed earlier of just how you can obtain this. There's many different avenues, but this is obviously the box that you get. There's 2 in each box. This is what's going to come out of the box. You have 2 individual actual plungers and Narcan administration devices. Here's what we have here. First things first, you're going to walk up. You may see them happen to be sweaty. They might be breathing slow or not breathing at all. They might be blue. Or gasping for air. It all depends. It does affect the respiratory drive. So you're going to shake them. If they don't arouse or awake, you can give a little bit of a pinch on their trap, which is about right here. Squeeze a little hard, kind of. If they don't react to that, then you can proceed to get to this. So very, very simple. All you're going to do is simply just insert into one nair and squeeze the plunger. You squeeze it all the way down. There's 1 dose. You squeeze it. As soon as you push it all the way in, it's done. Hold there for about 1 to 2 seconds just to make sure it's all in there. And you wait. Recovery position after this, which you can focus on, because one of the side effects, it might actually cause vomiting and or nausea. So you can actually rotate them to their side, just so that way if there is a risk of vomiting, that basically they'll throw up on the side and not on their face. Now, one more thing to remember is that basically this is a very short, it's called a half-life or so. Just basically, it doesn't last very long. And it all depends on the potential of how much opioid is actually in their system. So this may, every 2 to 3 minutes or so, you're given a 2-pack. You can go ahead and administer another one. Every 2 to 3 minutes, if there's no change, or if they seem to be going back into the state that they were when you found them. And you can keep doing that every 2 to 3 minutes, as long as you still have more doses. And don't forget that call 911 at any chance that you can, and we'll respond and be there within minutes. And that's my demonstration.
Great, thank you, Matthew. We will now transition to public Q&A. Please submit any questions from the public to communityrelations@sacda.org. That's communityrelations@sacda.org. Additional panelists joining during the Q&A portion of tonight's event include Crystal Suchland, Supervising Criminalist with the Sacramento County District Attorney's Crime Lab, and Susan Hansen, a Substance Use Navigator, and Ann LePan, Case Management Manager with Sutter Medical Center. So we'll wait just a moment as the public want to submit some questions, and we have a couple that have come in already, so we will go ahead and start with that. First question is for District Attorney Schubert. Please tell us more about the onepillcankill.com campaign. What is next?
So the One Pill Can Kill campaign started almost a year ago now. That was thankfully through the support and the funding of the Board of Supervisors and our partnership with Department of Health Services and all the other organizations we've talked about tonight. So that campaign will stay on going at least now until December of 2023 with the funding. What's next is just the continued efforts like we're making tonight. We've done many things in the community. We've done safety fairs. We've partnered with schools. We're educating kids in the schools, and we're also trying to educate parents. So it's about prevention and intervention, trying to stop a lot of this. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Next question is for Crystal Suchland, the DA Crime Lab. How can you tell if a pill is fake and counterfeit or contains fentanyl?
Well, it's going to depend on basically how good the pill was made. With pharmaceutical grade pills, we can tell they're supposed to be a certain shape, a certain size. Any markings on it are very crisp and clear. Some of the pills that we've gotten are oddly shaped. They don't look right. The color doesn't look right, the size, the shape. And if you look at it either with your eyes or under a microscope, you can tell that the impressions that were made on it weren't done very well. I will say that some of them we've been getting in have been very good, and sometimes it is very difficult to tell without actual testing.
Can I just add to that? I think at this moment in Sacramento, if a pill was not purchased directly from a pharmacy, it contains fentanyl. Like, I don't care if it looks exactly like a blue M30 or what it looks like. I think we should safely assume they all contain fentanyl.
And if I can add to that, that is exactly what we've seen. In roughly 3.5 years, every M30 pill that has come in, except for last week, we did have one that actually contained oxy. Every single pill we've gotten in has been fentanyl.
Thank you. And there'll be questions where other panelist members can join in. So thank you, Dr. Mullin, for your addition. Next question is for Laura and Chris Didier. How do you talk to your kids and family about the safety and the dangers of fentanyl?
Laura, you want to start?
Sure. I would basically just start I would talk to any child. Even if you think, not my kid, we would have absolutely said that about Zach. No, he's not struggling. He does not dealing with a mental health issue or any kind of an outside stressor. So I think you just want to have these conversations in a very open and loving way, that to make sure they understand where their resources are, that they can, encourage them to talk with you, talk with a trusted coach or a physician. But the main thing that has to be a part of the conversation is to go through, a doctor, go through the proper channels to get any kind of support. That if you are thinking that you're going to treat your anxiety by going to Instagram or Snapchat because you've researched Xanax and you can get one, if someone told you someone's selling those, and just get it yourself, that it is potentially, that could be the last decision you ever make. So it's hard because you don't want to engage just in scare tactics, but this is really that scary. So you have to be honest about it, I would say, and try to be, like I say, just as loving and supportive in the process as you can be, while also letting them know just how dangerous this is.
That's an excellent question, and I'm very thankful that that question is asked, because it's a very important one for caregivers and parents and coaches and teachers. It's a delicate balance in today's world and the drug landscape that it is. Where on the spectrum should I be as a parent? For example, should I be super lenient and give a long leash, and maybe I'll be their best friend, and then I may be in the inner circle of what's really going on, and then maybe I can intervene and prevent unintentional death? Or should I keep a very short leash on the other side of the spectrum and be very strict and restrict their use on the phone and put parent control apps and GPS trackers and all of that? Well, I think it's difficult, and it depends on each family dynamic that they have. But I will tell you, you can search on YouTube how to spoof parent control apps, how to make it look like you're at your best friend's house for a sleepover when in fact you're not. And so I believe the best solution is to, just like Laura said, have us honest sit down, try to come from a place of love and concern, and avoid the do this, don't do that, because young adults want to show they can make their own decisions and they can make smart decisions. So just help them make an informed decision by saying, as your parent, I am freaked out right now. The DEA reported 20.4 million counterfeit pills that were seized in just 1 year, and estimate up to 42% have the potential to be lethal. The U.S. Customs Border and Protection Agency reported 11,701 pounds of fentanyl was seized in 1 year, and they estimate maybe 5% is seized. So there's theoretically 213,000 pounds of fentanyl out there, and it only takes 2 milligrams to be lethal. There's so much fentanyl out there; it is everywhere. And as your mom and dad, I'm really worried. Please help me, get through this. So let's talk. I want to have an honest talk, because it's going to affect your friends. And to just be open with the kids and just help them understand what they're facing. And this message has already said, unless you get it at a liquor store legally, or a dispensary legally, or a pharmacy, legally, you shouldn't be messing with it. And there's other ways to manage stress and anxiety and pain that we all struggle right now. And my heart breaks for those millennials and Z Geners, because we never had the struggles they face today with COVID restrictions. And now we have a deadly landscape. We never had that. We weren't, well, life wasn't like that for us when we were their age. And I think if we come from a place of empathy, and let me help you survive and navigate, I think they'll be more willing to have an above board response.
Thank you. Next question is for our partners at Sutter Medical Center, Susan Hansen, Substance Use Navigator, and Ann LePan, Case Management Manager. What are you seeing from other local hospitals? Any trends, fentanyl overdose admissions, any information in addition to what UC Davis provided to us that you could provide?
We're seeing about the same as UC Davis. I've noticed recently that most people come into the emergency room, and when asked what they're using, it's pretty much fentanyl. I do see a lot of people buying the pills from the streets, but lately I think trending would be just plain fentanyl.
Okay, and can you share what the role is of your substance use navigators in your hospital emergency department?
Yeah. So people come into the emergency room and they are usually in detox or have a medical diagnosis that's bringing them in related to, IV drug use. They're pretty open when they come to the emergency room, wanting treatment. And so we talk to them about getting help, getting started onto buprenorphine. I come in and talk to them about buprenorphine. I do the follow-up. I get them set up with follow-up if they're started. So they have a place to go to get their prescriptions when they leave the hospital, with counseling and medication treatment.
I think the biggest piece that Sue does is that she meets patients where they are. So there's no pressure that, you need to change, you need to do this. She just goes in and she's just a quiet person who sits there and listens to what the patient has to say. And by being that person, people open up to her and they will let her know what they're doing and what they need help with.
Thank you. Some additional data that was submitted to Sacramento County was from Dignity Health. And this is data from fiscal year 21 and 22 from 6 Northern California local Dignity Health hospitals. They had anywhere from 15 to 105 patients with fentanyl-related intakes, with the most intakes at the Mercy San Juan Hospital in Carmichael. They also had a significant, over 100% increase of those intakes related to fentanyl from April of 2021 to April of 2022. Okay, next question is for Dr. Mendonza. What are you seeing with trends with children and adolescents?
It's a great question. It's one that we get asked a lot. We are unfortunately seeing an increase in overdoses and poisoning in our children and adolescents. We're seeing slight upticks across California and across the nation in deaths in middle school and elementary school and junior high. So unfortunately, we're getting the word out, we're getting the information out to schools, but it's just not getting out fast enough. And unfortunately, as you've heard tonight, kids get a hold of one pill. They think they're getting one thing. Their friends told them, "Oh, hey, I had a great high. It didn't do anything bad to me. Try it." And that one particular pill is fatal. And so we really want to get out there and get the word out. So unfortunately, we are seeing this epidemic striking in single-digit age children. So.
Great, thank you, Dr. Mendonza. And for the public, please continue to send in your questions to communityrelations@sacda.org. We do have some additional questions that have come in. Next question. Before being accepted into a Suboxone or Methadone clinic, shouldn't there be a mental health evaluation connected to acceptance into that program? Other medications such as psychiatric meds should be considered. Will there be more checks and balances in this area? So any panelists can respond to that.
I take this one. So for me, I'm an emergency physician and I watch people die. I watch people die every day. And so for me, buprenorphine and MAT is life-saving. For me, I believe that opioid use disorder is an emergency. So anybody who is using opioids is at risk for death. They're at risk for death today. They're at risk for death tomorrow. They're at risk for death next week. And so for me, those people need to be started on life-saving treatment now. I cannot wait for a mental health evaluation because in between that time, that person will die. And so for me, I think everyone who is anywhere at risk for death, I need to stabilize them. And that means starting medications that can save their life. And so we're starting buprenorphine up front. We're trying to stabilize that person's withdrawal symptoms. We're trying to save their life to keep them from using. And then later, once they're stable and they're not at immediate risk for death, absolutely, as Severine mentioned, counseling is wonderful. But upfront, we need to save their life. And any delay means that person is at risk for death.
And if I may add, in all programs with the counselors, referrals are done when necessary. If we need to send, to the access of care to mental health, it will be done.
Thank you. Next question is somewhat related to treatment. So this would be for Dr. Mendonza, Dr. Mullin, or Severine. What are your treatment options if someone is struggling with opioids? How and where can people get help for substance use or mental health challenges? What prevention and treatment services are available?
Dr. Mullin, you want to go first? I can talk about county ones if you want to go.
Sure. Yes. So we have, and actually we're very lucky in Sacramento in that we have really wonderful bridge programs in almost all of our emergency departments. So pretty much if you walked into UC Davis, Sutter, some of our Dignity hospitals, you can get treatment right there because we believe that opioid use disorder is a life-threatening emergency. And so people can be stabilized on buprenorphine and then referred to treatment. We're pretty lucky. Sacramento has done a really good job of trying to expand access to treatment and has a good component of a lot of our federally qualified healthcare centers, wonderful treatment centers that Severine has. And I'm sure Dr. Mendonza can talk about a lot of the county resources. But yeah, so I mean, if you wanted to get help, you could go walk into my emergency department right now and they would help you.
I am very blessed to be part of Sacramento County. Sacramento County has an on-demand system. Not a lot of counties have this. It's something that I am very, very proud of. It makes me very happy to work for Sacramento County because we have this. So as Dr. Mullin said, you could walk into the ED, you could get linked up, you could get services right there. In Sacramento County, you could go to any of our contracted providers that are out there, the ones that Severine talked about, let's say WellSpace, any of our narcotic treatment providers, residential providers, outpatient providers. You can start services in the outpatient setting immediately. If you need residential or withdrawal management or detox services, just have to come through the county. We have to do a little bit of an assessment and we'll work to get you placed into one of those services. So we have a lot of services available. We also believe and we uphold the no wrong door policy, which is something that's seen across the state of California. So if you happen to get linked up with a mental health provider and you have substance abuse needs, they will cross-refer you immediately to substance abuse. And in substance use prevention and treatment, if you have a mental health need and you come in through the substance abuse door, we're going to cross-refer you over there for a mental health and psychiatric evaluation if you need that. And if you need both, you can have both as well. It's not an either or. So a lot of options, a lot of opportunities to get help here in Sacramento County.
And I'm just going to clarify the on-demand, if it's okay, because I did not understand what on-demand meant. So, for some services, you have to have an appointment and assessment. Beautifully, with medication-assisted treatment, you can just call the programs of your choice, make an appointment with this program, and then get in. So that's what we mean by on-demand. You do not have to wait. There is no wait list. You even can get treatment sometimes the same day.
And I've never had an issue finding the follow-up treatment. Sacramento has a really good treatment follow-up for Matt.
Thank you. And Dr. Mendonza, maybe later on you can throw that resource page back up for the public because all of those website links, folks can find information around treatment resources. So we will move on. We have a couple of more questions. Next question will be for Crystal Suchlin with the DA's Crime Lab. How do you test a pill for fentanyl? Can you test a partial pill?
Sorry, muted. First of all, we test it by two different means. We do a color test, which is a presumptive test to kind of push us in the right direction of what this possibly could be. Because when we get it in, it's a complete unknown. After that, we will confirm it. We extract out the drug out of the pill or the powder that we received, and then run it on one of our instruments, a GCMS. And then that tells us exactly what's in that pill. And yes, we can do partial pills, we can do quarter pills. Depending on the strength of the drug, we can also do residue if we just find a little bit of it somewhere.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to add something to the fentanyl test, if that's allowable.
Sure.
I think fentanyl test strips are a really good tool, and it's good to see their use increasing. And there's a lot of news in recent weeks and months about the effectiveness of a fentanyl test strip. But I think with the use of a fentanyl test strip, education is critical to go with that. Not all fentanyl test strips on the street may be able to detect every type of analog of fentanyl, and namely one big one is carfentanil. And then how it's tested also could be, if it's not tested properly, it could give a false security, like there's no fentanyl, but in fact there are. A pill also, when manufactured in a clandestine market, and they're not really made in a certified lab. There's no, as the industry term is called, content uniformity, which assures homogeneous uniformity of at least 95%. So what results is what's called the chocolate chip cookie effect. A chocolate chip cookie may have some chocolate chips on one side and a lot more on the other side. So if a user breaks a pill in half or in a quarter and tests part of a pill, and there's no presence of fentanyl in that part of the pill, that doesn't assure that there is no fentanyl in the other part of the pill. So they could think that, well, half the pill didn't have fentanyl, so therefore the other half also doesn't have fentanyl. That could potentially be deadly. So again, education needs to be a big part of fentanyl test strips.
Great, thank you. Next question is for Matthew Hines with the Sacramento Fire Department or Dr. Mendonza. Will people be liable or get in trouble if they try to help somebody who is overdosing? And can you speak to the Good Samaritan Law?
I can start with this one if you like. The Good Samaritan Law, it was adopted in this area that we're discussing right now in 2010. And basically it protects anyone who wants to involve themselves and try and help the actual person who had the opioid or drug overdose issue. It also protects anyone, if the actual patient goes and tries to seek medical help, it protects them as well for any, anything to go against them lawfully in that manner. So you're fully protected for doing the right thing.
And Dr. Mendonza, did you want to add anything to that in terms of where people can get more information?
Yeah, I think firefighter Hines, touched on it. AB 472 is the law that basically made this Good Samaritan Law was passed in 2013. There's information about the Good Samaritan Law and how you're protected, both if you're bringing yourself in for help or if you're helping somebody else. Just like CPR, if you give CPR and you break someone's ribs, nothing's going to happen to you. Again, that's why we say give Narcan, give Narcan, give Narcan. You're not going to be held liable. It's a very safe. Medication to give to people. But on our resources, on our onepillcankill.sac.com, if you go to our resource page, there's a link to our Good Samaritan laws and information about that.
Great, thank you. Next question can be for our hospital partners or Dr. Mendonza. Do you partner with harm reduction agencies? What are the benefits of harm reduction, and where can someone get fentanyl test strips and Narcan in the county?
This is SMCS.
I work with harm reduction a lot. I hand out their flyers a lot. They also do buprenorphine MAP services. So sometimes I refer to them for that. They do give away free Narcan, and they do give away the free fentanyl test strips. So I'm a fan of harm reduction services. You can just walk in, and some of the harm reduction services deliver. So yeah, and I do carry Narcan, and I do carry the fentanyl test strips.
I agree completely with our colleagues over at Sutter Medical Center. Harm reduction services is a great resource. Up on the screen right now, there are some other harm reduction organizations that we partner with in Sacramento County. Safe Alternative through networking and education, the SANE out in Del Paso, out in the Natomas area. Sacramento LGBT Center on 20th Street also does Narcan and fentanyl test strips. The Gender Health Center on V Street. Sunburst Projects over on the Arden Hurley area. And then if you want some more information, again, One Pill Can Kill SAC, the website, and you go to resources, you can see, you can read about our harm reduction organizations. Again, onepillcankillsac.com, go to resources, and then you can also visit www.harmreduction.org.
I just wanted to add one thing about harm reduction, because I think harm reduction is really the key to eradicating or to treating opioid use or substance use in our community, because the harm reduction approach is really just the approach that we should all take to people who are using drugs, which is a destigmatized approach to meet people where they are and to help them get through their journey with dignity. And so if we recognize, like, substance use disorder, the natural progression is kind of a relapsing, remitting course, and people do not always have this straight climb of a ladder. And so to be able to meet that person where they are in their journey towards recovery and to help them on that journey. And that's the harm reduction approach that we should all take. So harm reduction isn't an actual place. Harm reduction is a way of approaching individuals that helps them get into recovery. However that journey is, we should be there for them.
Thank you, Dr. Mullin. A couple of more questions. This is for the crime lab or the Sacramento Fire Department. How can law enforcement and private citizens protect themselves from fentanyl exposure? Touching or being in contact can be very fatal.
Do you want to take that? Or I don't see people on this, out in public that often. I just get what's given to us. So other than obviously not touching it, getting it in your eyes, getting it into your mucous membranes. But
so I just want to say, so if someone has overdosed, reversing that person or touching that person and giving them naloxone does not put the bystander at risk. Like, they're not going to overdose. Like, if someone has overdosed, you can feel safe touching that person. You can feel safe administering naloxone. You do not have to worry that fentanyl is not going to be absorbed into your body and you are not going to overdose. It is completely safe to help someone who is overdosed. You do not need to be afraid at all. And so I would really encourage you, if you think someone has overdosed, please do not be afraid for your safety at all. And if you have access to naloxone, please administer it.
Thank you.
You took the words out of my mouth, so thank you.
Okay, so one or two final questions. Dr. Mendonza, where can people dispose of unused or unwanted medications?
There's a lot of places around Sacramento County, safe disposal sites. We partner with a lot of our pharmacies. A lot of Sacramento County agencies out there have drop boxes. Like I said, a pharmacy, a lot of hospitals do it. Again, if you want to know about all of our places that you can safely dispose of medication, onepillcankillsac.com. Go to resources, you'll see that. in there on the safe disposal sites. We ask you, please, whatever you do, do not flush your medication. Please do not throw it in the garbage can. Please dispose of it safely. As we know, people go through garbage cans. The trash can be picked up by somebody else and be put in someone else's and put someone else at risk. So again, please dispose of your medication safely. Most pharmacies, if you contact them, they'll have a mechanism for you to be able to dispose of that. We have take back days in Sacramento County throughout the year. And again, all that information is going to be available on your onepillcankillsac.com.
Thank you, Dr. Mendonza. Final question to all panelists who would like to respond to it. What is the most important message to our community around this issue?
Save lives. Use Narcan.
Talk about it. Kill the stigma.
Never forget the human toll of losing somebody's life and understanding what the Didiers and so many other people have gone through to help us prevent it in the future.
Exactly. I was just going to say, never think this can't happen to me, and make sure you educate yourself and all the people you love.
I just want to echo what everybody else is saying here in that, this is something that is totally pervasive in our community. There is no shame. And that anybody who is worried, concerned about a loved one themselves, please ask for help. There is no shame. Help is out there, and carry Narcan.
Fentanyl changes everything, and the drug landscape of the past is different, and we need to spread awareness to protect each other, our family, and our friends.
Please reach out for help. Sacramento County, our neighboring counties, Placer County, El Dorado County, Yolo County, San Joaquin County. They all have great resources. Don't be afraid to reach out. If you're not sure, just reach out, ask somebody. We'll get you connected. We'll get you directed to the right place, and we'll get you the help that you need. So please don't feel ashamed. This is around, and please allow the help that we have available to you.
When all else fails, if you come across this, call 911.
Thank you to our panelists. In closing out the evening tonight, just to reiterate that fentanyl poisonings and overdose deaths are spiking across Sacramento County. It's an urgent threat to our safety, the safety of our families, and the safety of our community. Moving forward, we will continue to address this epidemic and emphasize prevention, public awareness, public health, and public safety. I would like to thank our panelists, our viewers, and again acknowledge the lives lost to fentanyl poisoning and overdose. Again, our condolences to Laura and Chris Didier and other parents and family members locally and across the nation for their deep loss. The presentations and resources referenced and provided tonight will be available on the onepillcankillsac.com website. We will now leave you tonight to view a brief public service announcement. Thank you for joining us and have a good evening.
"98% of the most common street pill tested in Sacramento were fake and contained deadly fentanyl. And just one of those pills can kill you. Learn more about fentanyl at onepillcankillsac.com.